Hi friends, my name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Fate Signals from Vegas. What I really wanted to come on and talk about today, except that my Facebook accounts were disabled because of the Atlantic Council and their anti-imperialist, anti-war kind of trying to squash that information from getting out but on Facebook. But what I really wanted to talk about today was not about Louis C.K., the comedian. I'm not that interested in him, but Louis C.K. and the way he is behaving is like an expression of the pushback against anything that's politically correct or against the Me Too movement. There's this pushback on the Me Too movement because there are so many perpetrators of sexual predation and sexual violence against women, in particular women, that there, and all the people that are probably pushing back on it have some sort of a history that they really don't want sort of brought to light. And like I've said recently when I was talking about Joe Rogan's site and how there's an extraordinary amount of misogynists who comment on that site. And what is it about the content of Joe Rogan's site, the Joe Rogan Experience, that attracts so many misogynists? Because misogyny is rampant, of course you're going to get pushback on the Me Too movement, because it benefits patriarchy to continue on with misogyny and to continue on with sexism. If you're on the winning side, if you are, particularly if you're a white male, and I'm not labeling all white men this way, but if you're on the winning side, why would you want to lose any power? The saying, those in power, they're not going to willingly give up power. You sort of have to challenge it and you have to take it. And the Me Too movement, really, why? I'm sorry, I'm a bit disjointed. I've had some interruptions. So the Me Too movement is, there's people that go, oh, it's gone too far. What I was saying too is that white men, I'm not labeling all white men this way, but who has power like that in a patriarchal society would want to give it up? And the way to keep sort of women in their place in a way is to allow misogyny to go unchallenged and allow sexism to go unchallenged, and to not address toxic gender stereotypes and so forth. And Louis C.K., he, as you may know, like about 9 months ago, he was exposed for sort of sexual predation on a couple of his employers and exposing himself without consent and that sort of thing to those women, and then sort of, I think, tried to obstruct them sort of bringing that to light. And he's made really no reparations. There's a lot of these people like Matt Lauer and all those different people who have done sexually inappropriate things towards women in the workplace, or sexual assault or straight out rape or whatever. Those different people who've been exposed by the Me Too movement, they never seem to make any reparations towards their quote unquote victims. I don't like using that word victims. Survivor might be better. Survivors of that. And the Me Too movement is kind of like, I don't know why suddenly it's a big deal when it happens to be very, very wealthy people, very, very wealthy celebrities who are assaulted. This has been going on for the assaults on women, the rapes, the killing of women. That's been going on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And then suddenly it's a big deal and there happens to be a movement. I suppose it's good that there is some sort of movement, but it's sad that it took Harvey Weinstein and some very wealthy female celebrities for it to actually get any traction, but that's how it is. You know, it seems like, I guess it's because they have the money and they can get it out there in the mainstream media, and the mainstream media obviously that was going to give them more advertising to sort of expose that than it was to sort of protect Harvey Weinstein. Or maybe, and Harvey Weinstein had obviously so much, so many things that he'd done. I mean, he's just about done everything he could imagine, including getting Mossad to sort of interfere with Rose McGowan. I mean, you know, he's sort of like, seems like he's like a serial sort of sexual predator. You know, Bill Cosby, well, I'm not going to even go into him. He's like a disaster. They're all a disaster, really. They're all a disaster. But anyway, so Louis C.K. has decided that being as the opposite of politically correct, he's going to dump on shooting survivors of the Parkland shooting. He's going to dump on trans people. He's going to dump on LGBT people. You know, he's basically just going to dump on. He's going to dump on disabled people. You know, he's actually gone the full knuckle dragging sort of business, and is just. And he said, apparently, he said, "Well, what are you going to do? You've already You've already taken my life away," or he's lost his life or something. What are you going to do? Take my birthday or something like that? I mean, what a baby. But anyway, you know, I mean, he's really wealthy, and if he just sort of if he apologized and made some reparations to people and acknowledged what he did, but none of these people that do this, none of these men that do this seem to, they very carefully word things in a legal way, so they're never really admitting that they've done anything, and they never apologize, and they don't make reparations. And some of these people are incredibly wealthy. Like Matt Lauer has got hundreds of millions of dollars. Harvey Weinstein has hundreds of millions of dollars. These people, it's almost sociopathic. They don't seem to have any empathy for the victims. So anyway, so Louis C.K. is, he just sort of, it's like a FU to the Me Too movement from him. And yet I think he'll just skate through. It's like there'll be a lot of knuckle draggers that will think, yeah, you know, yeah, good on you, CK, saying FU to the Me Too thing, and not only that, but just going for it and dumping on all these different groups. Yeah, there's nothing like punching down. I hate that sort of analogy, that violent analogy, but that's what you call it, punching down on people who, you know, I mean, comedians are not supposed to be punching down. They're supposed to be punching up. But he's decided that punching down is a good way to go. Good on you, Louis C.K., for instead of sort of thinking about what you've done to those people that you've, who have lasting effects from that sort of sexual predation and stuff, and sexual sort of that kind of behavior. You're just sort of thumbing your nose at them and then just going the other way. So anyway, I don't normally believe in, you know, kind of, I'm not into this sort of the public hanging kind of thing of people who've done things that are wrong. I really am not, and I'm not into sort of like, well, that's the end of you. I mean, if people were sincerely regretful and they were trying to make reparations and stuff, that's great. But I mean, and I'm not into this sort of the hanging in the public court of opinion sort of thing. But you know, I just wanted to comment on this Louis C.K. Thing because you watch. I'm sure that he's just going to skate through this, and because there are so many people, including women, who have internalized patriarchy, they've internalized misogyny and sexism. And they'll just think it's just fine what he's they'll be okay with it, and he'll just go on probably to and continue on his career. I mean, the amount of what is it? the amount of unbelievable ignorance from some of these celebrities too. I mean, look at, you know, look at Jerry Seinfeld, you know, sort of posing with IDF, you know, Israeli quote unquote defense forces, you know, and sort of going over there and training with them or something. I don't know, you know, he's doing some stupid thing with and posing with these brutal occupiers. I mean, that's his idea of, you know, he's so clueless. They don't know anything about what's going on, the occupation, the brutal occupation of Palestinians and the apartheid state, nor do they care. You know, so he's a tosser, and so is Gerard Butler, you know, that actor, the Irish actor, who actually, along with Fran Drescher, that's the woman from The Nanny, the actor from The Nanny, along with Ashton Kutcher, that guy from the 70s show, you know, these are all wealthy actors. And Pharrell, the singer, you know, Pharrell, that happy song that he was singing, those people and a few other celebrities all did a benefit for the Israeli occupation forces. $60 million they made for those people. The Israel gets $10 million every day from the United States government to continue on with their apartheid and their resettlement of an illegal occupation and their stealing of Palestinian land. They get $10 million a day for that. And here's these stupid celebrities who just don't have a clue. Or they do have a clue, I don't know, but they go and do things like that, raising $60 million for these murderers and occupiers. I mean, sorry, I have to keep pushing Swifty away because he's getting, I think he's getting a little hungry and he wants me to go and feed him, so he's getting a little bit pushy. Anyway, so, you know, these people, it's like, and also it's like that nothing seems to, they're living in a bubble and they don't have a clue. I mean, you look at all the different comedians like Kathy Griffin and just all the various ones, they don't seem to have a clue about the Democratic Party, that it's just as bad. It's a warmongering, corporate-owned, neoliberal party, and it's just dreadful. And they don't seem to, either they don't care or they just don't seem to, you know, grasp it. And they're always, they promote Hillary Clinton. She's a war criminal, but they don't care or they don't know. You know, these clueless, really wealthy people who just happen to be actors. You know, they're just so clueless. And you know, I think after a while they just get so out of touch with things, you know, because they are so wealthy. And yet they're the ones that get to be in the mainstream media and talk about stuff. Anyway, I'm going off the point here, and I'm not really exactly sure of the point I'm making. I suppose with Louis C.K. I just sort of think, where are the Bill Hicks comedians of today? Where are the, oh God, his name escapes me, the guy, the 7 deadly things you're not supposed to say on TV. I'm sorry, I'm a bit tired today. You know, where are these sort of comedians like that? You know, there's just these sort of losers that seem to be so out of touch with what's happening on the ground and what's happening to people, or they don't care. Or maybe that's why they're so famous, is because they haven't been like George Carlin, that's it. George Carlin and Bill Hicks, they haven't been like those people. They haven't exposed the truth that comedians are supposed to do, and that's why they're so popular, and that's why they get into the mainstream media and people promote them. If they were like George Carlin, Bill Hicks, maybe they'd just be ignored. So anyway, I wish the best for Louis C.K. I wish he would make reparations to to his his victims, but he's not going to do that probably, and he's not going to make reparations to his victims. And but I wish that he would maybe get some therapy and hopefully not do that again, and also stop punching down on various groups. And one thing I want to say about his ridiculing of trans people that he's done just recently, I've had a lot of friends over the years who are trans. I've been involved in, I'm not trans myself, I'm cisgendered, but I've been involved in the Transforming Tasmania, which is changing, my partner's written legislation for Parliament, and it passed the lower house, and it gives trans people and gender diverse people more rights. And I've spent the last 6 months working very, very hard. You know, I haven't been a spokesperson, but I've been a supporter, and I've gone to all the meetings with the politicians, and I've sat in the lower house chamber while they did the passing of that bill that my partner wrote, and it's a very emotional thing for me, and it's still ongoing, and it won't be finished until March, because this current government, the Tasmanian government, is a very right-wing and government, and it's transphobic, and it's racist and all that kind of thing, what goes along with right-wing governments. And so it's doing its best to try and sabotage this bill so it doesn't pass the upper house. But anyway, what I'm saying is you know, people like Louis C.K. are so clueless about this, they don't realize how big a deal it is for people who are completely denied their existence because they don't fit into these rigid binary, this rigid binary of gender that is a constructed thing. I mean, gender is a construct. All these behaviours that is displayed by women, or displayed by men, a lot of the toxic masculinity, these are all constructed things that are continued on, and they benefit patriarchy, particularly the toxic masculinity, which is, men end up being cannon fodder for these imperialist wars for oligarchs. I mean, there's a reason why these gender stereotypes that are being hung on to by the mainstream media, because they get funding from weapons manufacturers, and so they need fodder for their oligarchic wars, right? Patriarchy has always needed this toxic masculinity to continue on. It's about domination and crushing anybody who challenges it. So if you don't have men who lack complete empathy and who think that the way to be in the world is to be dominant and to sort of like, might makes right kind of thing. If you don't have men like that in the world, then how are you going to get fodder for these imperialist wars? And how are you, the empire needs toxic masculinity. In fact, the way it trains soldiers is to completely try and erase their personalities, try and erase and make them just sort of non-questioning automatons. That's what the military tries to do to these people, to these men. And then they wonder when they come back after they've done all these horrific things overseas, why they're killing themselves at a rate of 22 a day. Because as human beings, we're not supposed to be engaged in that sort of awful, immoral kind of violence. We're not supposed to. It doesn't matter how much we might try and make men, the mainstream media might present this sort of tough thing about men, that you've got to be tough and all this kind of thing, and all the movies promote these sort of almost like superhuman, sort of like nothing ever bothers them kind of thing, and then lacking in emotion and just mowing people down, and it doesn't mean anything. That's not what human beings are. It doesn't matter if you're male or female, unless you're a sociopath or a psychopath who literally has no empathy. But most people aren't like that. There's a lot of psychopaths who do join the army, right? The military. But there are a lot of people who are just like lovely people like Mike Preisner, who was indoctrinated by empire to believe that, you know, they were doing something good when they joined the military. You know, and all that sort of thing. But most people are just like Mike Preisner, lovely people, or people who are poor, you know, the poverty draft, and they end up getting into this dreadful situation, and it destroys human beings. We're not supposed to be like that. And in this sort of these masculine stereotypes, that's what ends up creating people like Louis C.K. and that thinks that it's okay to he's not going to say he's not going to really make reparations to those women. None of those people who you know, like that have done these sort of things are going to do that. They're worried about their careers. That's what they're worried about. You know, because of the way patriarchy, you know, it's you know, there's so much misogyny. I've talked about this in a couple of videos ago when I was talking about the Joe Rogan experience and the content and how much misogyny it attracts. There's so much misogyny that is it any surprise that people like Louis C.K. just think, oh, F you, you know, I don't care? Because most of what's set up sort of supports the the continuation of misogyny and sexism. You know, if you only have to look on social media, it's appalling, the amount of misogyny. You know, and you may not notice it if you're not a woman, but it's appalling. I've been on the receiving end of it. I decided to disable the comments on that video about the Joe Rogan thing, because I knew that there would be some men that would take great offense at me criticizing the Joe Rogan experience, the actual content, or even questioning it. And there was a few thumbs down on it, and I bet you they were really disappointed they couldn't do this big long rant at me, you know, and I'm sure there would have been some nice choice criticisms about me and my appearance and whatever, you know. This is the sort of, and that would have been okay if you'd reported somebody calling you an effing C, like someone did to me on a live stream once, or whatever. That, you know, it's not against community standards, really. You know, you can just be as misogynist and sexist as you like. You see what that tells us? It tells us that it's okay. You know, the social media and the mainstream media, it tells us it's okay to be misogynist and sexist. And misogyny leads to violence against women. 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 women are sexually assaulted by the time they've left high school, or college. There's epidemic levels of domestic violence now. Even in Australia, almost every week some woman is killed by a partner. It's not stranger danger stuff, it's partners. And the fact that people think, there are men that think that if they have a problem, that they can just take out their whole family. Like, for example, in Thailand, just recently, just after New Year's, some man killed his whole family, 7 members, because his in-law, and himself, because his in-laws they weren't sort of welcoming enough to him or something. You know, so he feels like not only does he want to take his own life, but he's going to take his whole family, including his 6-year-old daughter and his 9-year-old son or something. I mean, there were 7 members of the family. You know, where do some men get this idea that it's okay, that these people are something that they're entitled to take their lives when they take their own life? Sorry, when they take their lives, they're entitled to take the lives of these other people, including these young children. Where does that mindset come from? Because you don't see women doing that. You don't see women going into schools and shooting everybody in the school, or shooting a lot of children in the school. You don't see women when they have a problem in their relationship and they're really depressed. You don't see them picking up a gun or a knife and killing their partner and their children and so forth. It's a rare occasion that a woman will ever kill their children. You know, it's very common though for men to in domestic violence, which is epidemic levels today, to not only kill themselves but kill their whole family, or they just kill their partner, or they kill their partner and their family and they go to prison. But it's totally common. So why is it that that is a common thing? See, these are the questions that just are not asked in the public sphere. Why is this happening? You know, why are men doing this sort of behavior towards women, and why do they think it's okay? And why, when they have power, do they feel that that it's okay to do this towards women? And I could say I'm part of the Me Too movement too. I've been sexually assaulted and raped. I was raped after I came out to a friend of mine. I came out as, I don't like to label myself in categories, but I'm going to do this for the sake of this video. But I came out as a lesbian in 1983. And I came out to a best friend of mine, and I'd been doing yoga with him for like 9 months every day. And he was a really good friend of mine, and I came out to him because I thought it would be safe to do so, because I'd come back from overseas, and I'd actually come out overseas when I was on holiday because I thought that might be a safe thing to do. And then I came back, and then I came out to my best friend, and that's what happened. He sexually assaulted me. So that's, you know, that's just one instance. There's been others, but that's one that, and these things, you know, I don't know if some men realize the repercussions of that. I mean, it turned out later that, you know, it turned out I realized he was actually a very angry man, but he was also obviously a misogynist. It was like, I don't know what was his problem, but, you know, this is sort of, men go on and they don't think about these things. But, you know, you can imagine if, like, I was 23 and, you know, you're coming out to your best friend and that's how they respond. So anyway, you know, but getting back to Louis C.K., you know, to punch down on trans people who are such a marginalized group. And let me tell you that trans people are, for trans people to survive, they've had to be incredibly strong, because everything about society tells them that they're a freak. There is a big pushback against trans people now that there's more rights for LGBT, you know, for the gay and lesbian community, and there's been marriage equality passed and all of that. Now the focus is turning on trans people. The amount of transphobia that was expressed by the mainstream media and by some people when, after the marriage equality survey that eventually marriage equality passed in the Parliament here in Australia, but transphobia now is the big thing. And people seem to take a great delight in being transphobic. And they don't know any trans people, and they don't care to know any. All they want to do is mock and you know, in the United States, black trans women are killed at a rate of, I don't know, there's like 30 a year. It's almost like one a week or something of black trans women being killed. It's a big deal. Transphobia causes violence. And, you know, and the thing is that we have to realize that there is more than two genders in this world. There's more than these constructed stereotypes. You know, if we have to start grasping that, and that's not some modern day phenomenon. This has been going on for thousands of years. You can, you know, in indigenous societies like the Native Americans, they revered trans people. You know, there's a whole two-spirit thing. Trans people have been around for a long time. It's something that happens. They are part of society. So, you know, they're nothing to be afraid of. Trans people and gender diverse people are nothing to be afraid of. There are people who don't want to, they're non-binary, and they don't want to identify as male or female. There are people who have different sexual characteristics, like variations of sexual characteristics, or intersex people who have lots of different sorts of, they can either be sexually ambiguous, or they can be, they have different chromosomes, all sorts of variations of chromosomes. There are so many variations of, there's so many variations. There's just not this binary thing that is put forward to us. And so we need to grasp that and then stop pushing against trans people, because they're just, I mean, they're, I know a lot of trans people, and they're just wonderful individuals, and they're incredibly courageous and strong, and they've had to put up with so much, and it's so, and we need to be supportive. They're not doing it the ridiculous things that are said about trans people. They're trying to infiltrate the women's movement. Please, there must be, a million or so trans people in the world. What do you think, they're super people? They're trying to overthrow some women's movement? Please. They're just trying to live their life. They're trying to survive. That's what they're trying to do. So let's stop with the transphobia, for goodness sake. It's just so ignorant and pathetic. And this nonsense about the nonsense about trans people in public bathrooms and stuff. Good heavens, they're trans people I know are afraid to go into public bathrooms. It's not people who are in the bathrooms shouldn't be afraid. I mean, if a man, right, and a trans woman is not a man, but if a man wanted to rape somebody, they just go into a bathroom. They don't need to go through the whole trans thing to do that, to get into a women's bathroom. It's ridiculous. See, these are all just ridiculous points that are brought up. This is the sort of nonsense that's been brought up to us in this Transforming Tasmania, trying to get this legislation through Parliament, which is still going through because the Parliament's being obstructive. The government, sorry, not the Parliament. The Labor Party and the Greens Party have been very supportive in Tasmania, but the Liberal government is just transphobic and is just trying to please, obviously, their donors and stuff, and the religious right. So anyway, let's stop trying to, let's push back against this transphobia, because we have to grow as a society and stop being just so these terrible restrictions that really end up excluding people and making their lives really, really difficult and dangerous. Anyway, what I was saying once again about Louis C.K., I hope he gets it together, because if his new approach to comedy is to punch down at every marginalized group, disabled people and LGBT people and so forth, well, I hope that fails spectacularly, but it may not. Like I said in my other video, in the Joe Rogan Experience video, there seems to be this push to want to actually go back to decades where women are just in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant, and that rape is okay in marriage. I mean, it seems to be this pushback. That's what I think the alt-right and their, men join this alt-right thing, because it almost gives them permission as a group to be incredibly misogynist and racist, and just fits in with their values, and so it's almost like there's some kind of gives them permission to be big misogynists and to say all sorts of outrageous, disgusting things to women online. And there's this push, and I feel like there's this undercurrent with the Joe Rogan Experience where they attract so much of that misogyny. There has to be something about the content which is sort of almost giving some kind of permission to be a certain way. And that's why I criticized it. So anyway, that's really all I wanted to say. It was kind of meandered, but I wanted to make a point. I didn't really think about this particular issue too much before I sat down, because I was too surprised. I'm not surprised about Facebook once again unpublishing my pages or banning me permanently. I don't know what it's going to be. So if you're a friend of mine on Facebook, if it turns out that it's a permanent ban, it probably won't be, but if it turns out it's a permanent ban and you're a friend, you can contact me. If you can let me know in the comments section, and maybe, and you know, I can find a way to keep in touch. But anyhow, so thanks so much for watching. I hope you subscribe to this channel if you like the content. If you don't, then just don't. You know, hit the like button and click the notifications bell for updates. Otherwise, you won't. And I mean, my days, probably our days of independent. Anybody who's doing independent, anti-imperialist, anti-war stuff, or on Facebook, the days are numbered. Sorry, on YouTube, the days are numbered. I think because YouTube is also, it's owned by Google, and Google is part of this whole military and industrial complex thing too. So who knows when that is going to come to an end, but I just keep plodding along until it's not working, until eventually I'm banned from everything. You know, what can you do? You just have to keep going until, you know, and hope for the best. Anyway, so thanks so much for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Till next time, bye for now.